So moving on to the next story, it looks like one that you were looking at, Matt, related to the Internet of Insecure Things again. I guess there's a big, you got some updated information here?
So this was an interesting, I'm going to call it a release. So a group of master's students at the, I hope I said this right, Universidad Europea de Madrid in Spain.
The University of Madrid?
Pretty much. Released basically 60 vulnerabilities in one go against 22 different Internet of Things platforms, mostly modems and customer premise equipment. Okay. Like if your ISP sends you a very specific router that you hook up and they provide service through that, we're talking that kind of stuff. And this runs the gamut of all the same old IoT vulns we've been seeing for a very long time. A number of them are devices that Telefonica, which I believe is a Spanish ISP, gives out, like I was saying, to their customers. There are a number of other smaller, or not smaller, but less represented ISPs in there, Vodafone and Orange being two of them that people might recognize. Mm-hmm. These vulnerabilities seem to mostly affect those devices, and they may not have much of an impact for American users, but overseas users would probably want to take a look, see if their devices are on this list. And if they are, if you have the option, take them off the network until you're sure that a patch has been released. Okay. One of the things that I'm not very surprised about, I'm a little bit sad about, is that these kind of vulnerabilities, the majority of them are web vulnerabilities. There's nothing very specific to the Internet of Things here, except that these devices all tend to have, web control features, from within the network you would log in. Exactly.
Purposes, right.
So, I mean, it's sad that most of the vulnerabilities that we know about from the IoT devices tend to be these sorts of web-based things. Which makes them vulnerable to, I think we talked about either in the last show or the one before, things like that exploit kit, where if you can bounce the attack off someone's browser and towards the device, they would be vulnerable in that way as well to the outside world.
Right, and that's why these cross-site request forgery type vulnerabilities are a big deal, is that's how the bad guys bounce them through your web browser inside your home network back towards these Internet of Things web interfaces.
Precisely.
Right.
Yep. And there's a number of those at the top of the list. So this isn't the first time we've seen such a large dump of IoT or embedded vulnerabilities. Actually at DEF CON 22, a group called GTV Hacker, who was renamed to Exploiteers if you want to go look them up, they released a whole bunch of device vulnerabilities in the same way, all in one go. So I think the takeaway from that is that these aren't necessarily hard to find. If a group of master students can do this, or a bunch of hackers on the internet can, they're very low hanging fruit sorts of things.
Right.
And the problem is we're still seeing this, and it kind of needs to get addressed. I realize a lot of these are very low cost devices, and people treat them like it's junk hacking, but the impact is still very real.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said before, most of these don't have very good patch management processes. So people buy them, they put them on their network. You might not ever upgrade the thing until years later, even though patches have been released. I've noticed that some of the vendors are actually getting better about that now, where they have automatic patch updates. I actually just bought a home router recently, a new one. It was a Linksys actually, and it actually has an automated update, and they hook up to a cloud account and all this stuff. In any event, most of them are smaller embedded devices, don't have a lot of high performance power, although they're getting more powerful as time goes on here. It's one of those things, if you have one of these, I would recommend going to take a look to see if you're on the list there. Maybe assess how critical is your vulnerability, because I'm assuming they're not all the same, and see if if you can do something to mitigate that. I'm not saying go get a new one, but because who knows what the next model has. You would think, though, with such limited processing power and such limited space to actually have a web interface, they write some tighter code, right? So, but I guess you never know. Maybe the fact that they're cramped into a small kind of footprint, that they don't really have the ability to really write a very robust interface most of the time.
Input validation code, because it's not strictly necessary for what it, yeah.
Or they may not think it is because it's only exposed to the LAN side, but like we talked about, there's some of these actors who can kind of, run a drive-by that runs inside your browser that goes and attacks your home router from the inside. So, good story. Another one that we should probably just keep an eye on. We've seen all sorts of Internet of Things stuff get compromised, DVRs, home routers, residential gateways. What are those? Your disk drives that are connected to the network there. Yeah, network attached storage. So all these things are out there, and it's just a matter of making sure. Oh, my other thought is when these things get compromised, I've said this before as well, you rarely will actually know that your DSL modem or your residential gateway is compromised because it's at the very edge of your perimeter network. So you won't even see that traffic. Unless you have something like you're one of us and you're actually watching the stuff between your residential gateway to your, to your internet provider. But most people are just looking from the gateway in towards their own home network. So if somebody compromises it, you might not ever know that happened, and years could go by where somebody's using it. And they don't usually, your device doesn't usually reboot, so it'll persist in memory, stay there, and continue to run the malware that they deploy on there.